Let me now also invite CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair in this conversation. Tom, good morning. Great to see you.
Good morning, Akshay.
So, what an exciting day. What has stood out most to you in these last days of election?
Well, as you just correctly pointed out in your conversation with Scott, there was a damper on the final day because of the horrific murders and the tragedy in British Columbia. And I think that every party got it just right. I mean, there was a little bit of rally here, but they would cancel that there, and everything was a little bit toned down because obviously we all come together at a time of horrible human crisis of that nature. So that put a little bit of a damper on the end of the campaign. But I would say overall, we've watched a very fast campaign. We've watched a campaign that was very dense, hugely affected by circumstances south of the border, of course. That's completely played into the numbers. Who would have thought just a few months ago that the Conservatives, who had this massive lead over the Liberals, things would have turned around the way we just saw in that polling it is done. So I think that there's a lot to watch tonight. I agree with Vashi. Keep an eye on all of the party leaders. I don't think that Mr. Carney is going to have any trouble getting elected near Ottawa, but I do think that we've been told by some newspapers that Mr. Poilievre might have to work hard. I do believe that it should be fine for Mr. Poilievre. You could see in the numbers of the advanced polling that the party had done the necessary work of getting out their votes. I think he should be okay. But with regard to Mr. Blanchette, we don't talk enough about him. He's within the gravitational pull of the very strong Liberal tilt in Greater Montreal. And that could really affect his chances. I can tell you that the Bloc has been doing very much like the Conservatives, sending everything that they could into their leader's riding to ensure his election victory. So it might be there for him, but it's going to be a very tough fight. Across the province, the Bloc will be losing a lot of seats tonight. I mean, that's the clear indication. How many? That remains to be seen. Blanchette was bravely predicting he could hold on to 29 of his current 33 seats. I find that extremely optimistic. I think that he might lose quite a few more than that. And even though, again, Vashi just mentioned before, the possibility of the NDP losing party status if it falls below 12 seats, I think that that's actually a possibility for the Bloc as well. We'll see how the night turns out. Elizabeth May, of course, well-liked personally in her riding, but is that going to be enough? Or are the Liberals going to be able to tip her riding into their basket? We'll see that also tonight.
Okay, it's going to be very interesting. It's extremely competitive. There's a lot of tightness in this race, as we were discussing as well, Tom. But I want to talk to you about the people, the voters as well. Many Canadians believe that this is the most important election of their lifetime. How much is at stake, really? Let's discuss that.
Well, that's what we saw in the advanced polls. When you got 7.5 million Canadians who say, I'm going to vote now, I'm not even going to take a chance of being around or not on election day, I'm going to get my ballot in the ballot box immediately. That's a sign that people care a great deal about this election campaign. And that number, could well go over 70%, which would be a lot. I mean, it's still surprising that there's almost 30, even at that point, there's still be 30% who would stay home, but that's just the nature of elections today. I do think that the turnout is going to be determinant, and people do feel very much that this is going to affect their lives, what's happening with the Americans. And they're looking at the two main party leaders, because let's not kid ourselves, this has become a two-way race between the Liberals and the Conservatives. They're looking at those two party leaders and saying, okay, which one of them has the skill, the experience, and the expertise to pull us through? And I looked at the last numbers you had there from Nanos. I mean, in terms of preferred prime minister, we're up to a 20% lead now for Carney. And I think that that's a reflection of the very large difference in his experience and expertise versus that of Mr. Poilievre, who, of course, is a very capable politician, but that's basically his curriculum vitae. That's his resume, politician.
Yeah, a lot depends on the number of people who actually turn out for the voting, Tom. And I want to understand from you in terms of, what we've seen so far with the advanced polling versus the turnout and the polls that we have seen. If those numbers go really north of 70%, how much could really change in the polls that perhaps we've seen over the past few days and weeks?
I think that everybody learned a lesson in modesty with the most recent American election. Where we were told right up until election day by the pollsters that it was a very tight race, and indeed many of them had Kamala Harris in the lead. And then on election night, there wasn't a single county in the United States where the Democrats got more votes than they did under Biden. And that, I think, was a lesson in humility for all polling. So I think that people, would be wise counsel to just look at what's on the table, look at what's being offered and which is closest to your values, and go with that. Again, the two-way race is different from anything we've seen, certainly in a generation in Canada. We haven't seen this type of thing where the third parties just get pushed completely to the side, whether it's the Greens, the NDP, or indeed the Bloc. So we're going to find out whether that's held or whether people have gone back. The Bloc, for example, has had a siren song going for the past 2 weeks, which is we have to have a lot of Bloc people in Ottawa, otherwise all that sorts of things could happen without our approval. And that's a basic appeal to a very old feeling in Quebec. Has it gone through? Not from anything I've seen, but I'm going to keep my eyes on ridings in that second ring around Montreal to see whether or not the Liberals actually start moving into that territory. If they do, it could be a very difficult evening for the Bloc.
Okay, we'll be watching it very closely together. CTV News political commentator, former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. Tom, thank you for all of this.
Good to be with you, Akshay. All the best.
You as well.